I killed my dreams with my own bare hands, and I did it so slowly I didn't even realize they were dying. I found something last weekend that stopped me cold. I was cleaning out the spare bedroom closet. You know how it is, those annual purges where you promise yourself you'll finally get organized. When my hand brushed against a dusty shoebox tucked behind winter coats I haven't worn in years. Inside that box was my 25-year-old self, journal pages covered in her careful handwriting. Lists of places she wanted to photograph, business cards from gallery openings she'd attended, a half-finished application to art school in Italy, dreams written in blue ink that had faded but somehow still felt urgent. At the bottom of the box was a letter I'd written to my future self, the woman I thought I'd become by 50. She was so certain about who she was going to be, so confident that life would unfold exactly as she'd planned. And as I sat there on my bedroom floor, surrounded by the evidence of dreams I'd carefully folded away, like seasonal clothes, I realized I owed her an explanation. So today I'm going to write that letter, the one I should have written years ago. The one that explains how a woman who dreamed of becoming a travel photographer ended up managing spreadsheets in suburban accounting offices. How someone who planned to learn 3 languages and live in Morocco for a year learned instead to pack lunches and navigate carpool schedules. If you've ever found yourself wondering what happened to the person you thought you'd become, if you've ever felt guilty about dreams you've abandoned, or ashamed of ambitions you've outgrown, then settle in. Because this is the second bloom where we honor both the women we were and the women we're becoming. And today, we're going to have an honest conversation with our younger selves about the dreams we put in storage. Dear beautiful, ambitious, utterly convinced 25-year-old me, I'm writing this letter 30 years late, and I need to start with an apology. Not for the choices I made, but for the way I made them. For how gradually I let go of your dreams without ever really deciding to. For how I convinced myself that practical was the same as mature, that security was more important than passion, that someday and never were different destinations, when really they're the same place. You're so sure right now that life is going to unfold like a story you're writing. You've got it all mapped out. By 30, you'll have your photography business established. By 35, you'll have published that book of travel photographs you keep sketching in your notebook. By 40, you'll own a small gallery, maybe in Santa Fe or Asheville, somewhere with good light and interesting people who appreciate art. You're saving money for that trip to Morocco. You've already started learning Arabic phrases. You've researched the best times to capture the light in Marrakesh the way sunset hits the Atlas Mountains. You fall asleep looking at photographs of blue doors in Chefchaouen, planning the shots you'll take, the stories you'll tell through your lens. I remember how alive you felt when you held a camera, how the world became more vivid, more meaningful when you were looking for the perfect frame. You saw beauty everywhere, in the way morning light fell across ordinary kitchen tables, in the weathered hands of elderly strangers, in abandoned buildings that most people walked past without noticing. Photography wasn't just what you wanted to do, it was who you were. It was how you made sense of the world, how you connected with beauty, how you felt most like yourself. When someone asked what you didn't say, "I work at the bookstore," or "I'm a waitress." You said, "I'm a photographer," with such conviction that people believed you even though you hadn't sold a single print yet. The shift, 5:30 But then life started happening the way life does. Not dramatically, not with big tragic moments that would make a good story later. Just gradually, one small compromise at a time. You met David when you were 27. He was nothing like the artistic, slightly tortured, creative type you'd always imagined yourself with. He was steady, reliable. He had a good job with benefits and a 5-year plan that actually made sense. He loved that you were a photographer, called it your passion, but he also worried about your financial future in a way that felt caring rather than controlling. When he proposed, you said yes because you loved him, and you did love him, but also because there was something seductive about the security he offered. The promise that you could pursue your art without worrying about rent money. That you could have both stability and creativity. Except that's not quite how it worked out. Is it? First, there was the wedding to plan. Photography took a back seat to choosing flowers and tasting cakes and navigating family dynamics. Just temporarily, you told yourself, just until after the wedding. Then there was the house to buy, because married people need a real home, not the tiny apartment with the perfect north-facing windows where you'd been so happy. The mortgage meant you needed steady income, not the unpredictable earnings of freelance photography. So you took the office job, just temporarily, just until you got established. Then came the babies. Beautiful, demanding, life-changing babies who needed everything you had to give and more. Your camera gathered dust while you learned to navigate sleepless nights and endless laundry and the particular exhaustion that comes from loving someone so much it physically hurts. You told yourself you'd get back to photography when they were older, when they started school, when life settled down. But life never settled down, did it? It just changed shape. School-age children needed different things, but just as much of your time and energy. Somewhere in there, you stopped calling yourself a photographer. It felt dishonest when months would pass between the times you picked up your camera, when your equipment started feeling foreign in your hands, when you realized you'd missed entire seasons because you'd been too busy with soccer schedules and school projects and all the beautiful, important work of raising humans. You packed away your photography dreams the same way you packed away your pre-pregnancy clothes, carefully with the intention of returning to them someday, telling yourself this was temporary, that you were just storing these parts of yourself until you had space for them again. But storage has a way of becoming permanent, doesn't it? Those boxes get pushed further back in the closet. Other things get stacked in front of them. Years pass and you forget exactly what you put away, until one day you need something else entirely and stumble across the evidence of who you used to be. The hardest part wasn't giving up the dreams themselves. It was how natural it felt. How each small compromise made perfect sense in the moment. How love and responsibility and practical concerns created their own momentum that carried you further and further from the woman who used to see the world through a viewfinder. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to abandon your dreams. You just woke up one morning and realized they'd been abandoned. That somewhere between choosing security and choosing love and choosing to be the kind of mother you wanted to be, you'd stopped choosing yourself. And here's what's complicated about that. Here's what I need you to understand. Those weren't wrong choices. David turned out to be exactly the kind of partner you needed, even if he wasn't the kind you'd imagined. Your children became the greatest joy of your life, worth every sacrifice you made and more. The stable job provided the security that allowed you to sleep at night and plan for the future. You built a good life, A life full of love and meaning and small daily satisfactions. You became someone who could be counted on, someone who showed up, someone who took care of the people she loved. These are not small things. These are not consolation prizes. But they're also not the whole story. Because here's what I've learned in the 30 years since you wrote that confident letter to your future self. Dreams don't disappear just because you stop feeding them. They go dormant like seeds, waiting for the right conditions to grow again. At 55, I still catch myself noticing light. The way it falls across faces in coffee shops, how it transforms ordinary moments into something that begs to be captured. My eye still frames shots automatically, even when I'm not holding a camera. That part of you, the part that sees beauty and wants to preserve it, share it, celebrate it, never died. It just went underground. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the dreams we put in storage aren't lost. Maybe they're just waiting for us to have enough space in our lives, enough confidence in our own worth, enough permission to want things just for ourselves again. I started taking photography classes again last year. Did you know that at the community college, with a bunch of 20-somethings who know more about digital technology than I'll ever learn? I felt foolish at first, like I was pretending to be someone I used to be, but had no right to claim anymore. But then I picked up a camera again, really picked it up with intention, and something in me woke up. Not the young woman who thought she was going to conquer the art world, but someone new. Someone who had lived enough life to have something worth saying through her lens. My photographs now are different from the ones you dreamed of taking. They're not about exotic locations or dramatic landscapes. They're about the beauty in ordinary life that you have to have lived long enough to recognize. The way afternoon light falls across kitchen tables where families have shared thousands of meals. The hands of women our age lined with stories. The faces of people who've learned that happiness isn't constant, but it's renewable. Here's what I want you to know, sweet girl with your lists and plans, and absolute certainty about how life should unfold. The dreams you're dreaming aren't wrong, but they're not the only dreams worth having. The woman you think you're going to become is beautiful, but she's not the only woman you're capable of being. Life is going to ask you to make choices you can't imagine right now, between the dream and the person you love. Between the plan and the opportunity, between who you thought you'd be and who you're needed to be. And you're going to make those choices with grace and wisdom, and yes, sometimes with regret. But regret isn't the same as failure. Disappointment isn't the same as defeat. And putting dreams in storage isn't the same as throwing them away. You're going to learn that there are many ways to be an artist. That creativity doesn't die when you stop calling yourself creative, it just finds new expressions. You'll discover that the skills you developed as a photographer, the way you learned to see beauty and frame moments and capture truth, will serve you in ways you never expected. You'll photograph your children's childhoods with an eye that most parents don't have. You'll document family moments that will become treasures when those babies are grown and gone. You'll teach your daughter to see the world through a lens passing on something precious, even when you think you've given it up. And someday when the house is quieter and your time is more your own, you'll remember that the woman who put those dreams in storage had the wisdom to preserve them rather than destroy them. She knew even when she couldn't admit it to herself that someday she might want to take them out again. The trip to Morocco, I'm planning it for next year. David is coming with me, and we're going to see those blue doors in Chefchaouen together. The gallery. Maybe not in Santa Fe, but there's a small space downtown where local artists show their work, and I'm thinking about submitting some pieces. the book of photographs. Well, it might not be travel photography, but there's something to be said for documenting the journey of an ordinary life lived with attention and love. I know some of you listening have your own boxes hidden in closets, your own dreams carefully folded away like clothes you thought you'd wear again someday. Maybe you were going to be a writer, a teacher, a business owner, a world traveler. Maybe you had plans for graduate school, for starting a nonprofit, for learning to paint or sing or dance. Maybe you look at those abandoned dreams and feel like a failure, like you betrayed the person you used to be, like you wasted potential or settled for less than you deserved. But what if that's not the story? What if the story is that you were wise enough to know when to pause, when to prioritize, when to make space for love and responsibility, and the beautiful obligations that make a life meaningful? What if the dreams you put in storage weren't abandoned but preserved? What if they're not evidence of what you've lost, but proof of what's still possible? I'm not saying it's easy to reclaim deferred dreams. I'm not pretending that 55-year-old bodies and minds work the same way 25-year-old ones do. The photography world I'm entering now is different from the one I left. Technology has changed, my energy is different, my priorities have shifted. But here's what I have now that I didn't have at 25. I have lived experience to draw from. I have a perspective that can only come from raising children and losing parents and surviving decades of ordinary days. I have patience I didn't know I was capable of, and resilience I never thought I'd need. Most importantly, I have the knowledge that dreams deferred are not dreams denied. That there are seasons for everything, including seasons for putting our own desires on hold, and seasons for taking them out of storage and examining them in new light.